Yo, JD here, Limitless, and as you can see, we are back again on F1 2020, and of course, isn't the full game. This is simply just a preview build, and I will just be running through all the cars, part of the Mercedes, because I think it's common knowledge now that we are not allowed to showcase that car or the Hanoi circuit, Vietnam circuit at the moment. But I think in future, very shortly, we will be able to do that. And today, you can see by the title of this video, we are going to discuss the new ERS deployment system, or the new ERS model. And I can't showcase exactly how it works, but I can talk about it because I have used it myself, and I will be able to tell you exactly of how it functions in this game. And as I just said at the beginning as well, it may be completely different when the game comes out. I have no idea. This is simply just a preview build. Everything could change because it's quite common. I think even this handling model has already been confirmed that it's going to be quite different for the game itself, the beta that is coming out, I think, as we speak, as this video is out. I think a lot of people have the beta, including myself, so I'll be able to give an even more detailed description, although I don't think there'll be much content actually captured from the beta. But I will be able to talk about how the ERS mode deploys in this game and how it is different from 2019. And you'll be able to see now, these are just my fastest laps in each car except the Mercedes with default setup. These are the best laps I did. Obviously there's a lot more potential in these, but just give me a showcase of the sound and just the general handling, and just pay attention to the lap time as well. This Williams lap I did here was actually probably the best lap I did out of all the cars. It felt very nice, you know, using all of the track, and I don't think I really could have got maybe 2 or 3 tenths up on a perfect lap, but you can see I'm really using the track here, and yeah, pretty quick actually, considering this is meant to be the slowest car. But moving back to the main topic of this video, the ERS mode. Can't show the Grand Prix mode or anything at all, but the way it works on F1 2019, as you know, we have 5 modes, which is none, low, medium, I think it's medium? I can't even remember. Medium, rich, overtake, and then hot lap. And then, of course, hot lap will give you the maximum power you need, but overtake, I'd say from about 6th or 7th gear, will give you that little extra straight line speed. And then I normally would switch to medium or high. I think it is, yeah, it's definitely medium or high for gear 3 or something like that. That's really what I do on that game. And a lot of complaints about it is that it is very, first of all, it's not realistic. I think this model has been introduced in 2020 because I think a lot of the F1 drivers, like Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, a whole bunch of them, have spoken to Cody's behind the scenes and said, look, this is not realistic. It's a bit silly. No, we really need to change this. And I have to agree. Although I feel I'm very good at changing ERS and fuel, and it's quite advantageous if you actually master it. I wouldn't say I've mastered it because I don't like to say those kind of things, but I'd say I'm pretty handy at doing it. And I think on the wheel it's certainly easier than it would be on a controller. It's very, it just doesn't feel right to me. And that's been confirmed by the F1 drivers as well, because in real life, the teams actually map the ERS where it's pretty much automated, and then now and again they can press an overtake button to give a max deployment or just a lot more power until they switch it off again. And that's how it operates in real life. And I'm not an expert in real life F1 or anything at all. That's just what has been passed down to me in terms of knowledge. So a lot of the F1 drivers have said that to Codemasters, and then Codemasters, without even the F1 drivers even talking to them, I think have said through the community, because there's been a lot of frustration, it's just it just looks very awkward to watch. It's quite difficult to do, because you want to really be focusing on your driving. It's just not realistic, and I don't think it really promotes that amazing racing. And league racing, in my leagues you've seen, and other ones, although the races have been quite entertaining recently, and I have really enjoyed league racing in this game, it's, even in esports, it's, you really don't want to be in the lead of a race. You really want to be the car actually sitting behind, and just through that manual ERS management where you're just putting it from hot lap and then back down to mode 1 for certain corners and stuff like that. Real F1 drivers are not really doing that per lap. They're pretty much just focused on the driving, and the only thing they're really changing on a quality lap or something is just their brake bias or differential. That's the only thing they're really changing. Whereas with us, we're changing gears, and we're having to change fuel, and we're having to change the ERS, well over 30 times per lap, which is just absolutely nuts. And I would much rather focus on just the driving aspect, and for that to be the main reward and the main factor in someone actually being good at the game and winning races, not just with your ERS management, which I feel I've got to a good grips on, and I've used it more to my advantage than probably other people in this game. But I really do miss the days like 2012, 2013, where you were just pretty much just focusing on the driving most of the time. And yeah, I'm glad that they have adapted this. But in terms of the new model, how does it work then? The way it works is that there's 3 ERS modes, and what they do is from mode 1 to 2 is just completely automated. You don't change anything at all. There's no manual ERS. When you're in a race, you can't flick between the ERS modes. So that has been completely eliminated for this, and I'd say that is a good thing, definitely for sure. You're just spending a lot more time just focusing on the driving itself. But now what they have introduced is something very similar to the way KERS worked, and the only difference between KERS and this is that with this overtake button, which I'm sure you have seen screenshots of, is basically you just press it once and then it will enable it, and then it will just basically put you into just a much higher ERS mode, and your battery just goes down twice as fast, and it just keeps on going down until you press that button. So it doesn't stop when you brake or anything at all. It only stops when you press the button again to disable it. And if you don't press it, you'll just extend all of your ERS pretty much. And it basically works completely in line with the normal ERS depletement. Now, when you get 100%, at the end of a lap, it won't go back up to 100%. If you basically exhausted it down to 0%, the next lap, like in a race, it will still be in 0%. You just basically can't press it, and you have to drive with a lot less power than you potentially could be. So on 2019, I like to leave it in high when I'm by myself, like in a clean air in a race, and only use overtake on hot lap if I need to get in the DRS zone or someone, or if I'm trying to break someone's DRS, or on an in lap or out lap, and obviously in qualifying as well. But no, normally I'd put it in mode 0 for the corners, and then maybe medium for a bit sometimes, depending how I feel. Whereas with this, you only really are locked into mode 1 pretty much most of the time, and then it goes up to mode 2 or 3 when you have, depending on how much ERS you've actually got saved. So it's basically like KERS. You just press it once, like your DRS button, you press it and it will just stay active, so you'll just stay in that mode. So if you had 100% ERS and you pressed it and you didn't press it to the end of a lap, you'd just be in a much higher ERS mode for the whole lap. So it's basically, I feel, my opinion, it's basically like going from mode 2 to mode 5 without having to flick it with your thumb, like through the D-pad or anything like that, if you're on a controller or if you're on a wheel. I feel it's pretty much almost like an M&D shortcut, but it's just said that it's called an overtake button instead. So it definitely will take out the manual aspect of it by quite a bit. It's a much simplified version, but I still feel it can be used, and as a good strategy as well, because I think a lot of people will probably be pressing a button quite a bit. So before you go into a heavy braking zone with tight corners, you'll disable it, but then once you get on the straight, you'll put it on, and then you'll put it off again, and put it on, put it off again. So I would still say people were going to use it quite a lot, but definitely not as many changes as you would do if you use it manually. But the thing is with this, the thing I've noticed when I have been using it myself is that it goes down extremely quickly, and it runs in line with the ERS. As you can see, the yellow bar at the top, it runs completely in line with that, and it will deplete that twice as fast as well. So it's not like it just has an overtake section where, you know, only it has its own bar, if you know what I mean. It will run in line with the ERS. So it's very, very interesting. It doesn't disable when you go on the brakes or anything at all. If you run out, then it will completely run out, and you will just have to drive around in a much lower ERS setting until it gets charged back up. And no, even if you have 5 or 10%, you can use it, but it will probably deplete in like a second or something like that. So it's really not beneficial to use that. And I was saying lap time, I've tested it for full lap of the ERS or with the overtake mode enabled, and then a lap with it not being enabled, and I will be doing comparisons when the game actually comes out for good. But I'd say it gives you almost about 8 tenths to a second, I would say. So that is really a big advantage, especially in a league race kind of scenario, even in career mode or something like that, where you're hunting someone down. They've depleted all their overtake mode to get away from you. They can't change the ERS manually, so they're forced to mode 1 for most of that. And if you put it in mode 3, which is the overtake mode, then you are going to be so much faster than them. It's crazy. But again, I feel people could be using it in a similar way to manual ERS. I don't think it's going to be the case where you just go press it once per lap and then that's it, because you can just activate it at any point during the lap and keep on disabling it and then enabling it, if you understand what I mean. So it's quite difficult to put into words without actually showing you, which unfortunately I'm not allowed to do. But hopefully think of it as a DRS thing where you press the button and then you can just press it again to disable it, and it runs down exactly, that yellow bar runs down along with the green bar. You can see what that, if you're wondering what that green bar is for, on the HUD on the right hand side, that green bar is the overtake boost for it, pretty much. The overtake, I'm trying to think of the word, supply. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. So the supply of it, and they both run down together. And yes, obviously you don't have as much overtake supply as you would as normal ERS, so that green will run out before the ERS, and I think you'll still have about 25% of the ERS left, so if that makes sense as well. So it's going to be very interesting how people will use it. I think it could be tweaked potentially, because the beta comes out this week, which I'll get my hands on, and obviously we won't be allowed to probably showcase it. It'll just be purely for just feedback on the handling and just how the game is and the online aspect and stuff like that, which I feel is very, very important. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. I still think a lot of people will be using it quite often, in just little bursts. Whereas if you can get away with not using it for a lap or 2 laps or something, you could have an absolutely huge advantage. So I think it will reward players who are just will just have more raw speed. I think it will reward them more than it did on F1 2019, where you might not have had to have that much raw speed, but you could just stick behind someone so easily because the DRS is so powerful for a start, and just running no ERS, and you just had complete control of it. Whereas in this, now everyone would be forced down to mode 1 if their overtake is depleted. So it will actually force you to actually having to drive quite quickly. You really have to have actually some good raw speed here. So that is it in a nutshell. Hopefully I haven't blabbered on about it too much, but I just tried to explain it in as best detail as I possibly could without actually showing you. And you can see from this gameplay here, you're probably wondering why the camera is weird. That's purely because of, I think it's because of the camera settings, although it looks like a Renault is meshed in with this Red Bull for some reason, so I'm not sure what is quite happening there. But you be able to see with the speed of the cars, there's quite close in the midfield. It was fairly close together, but then once you get to the Red Bull, it does pull out a little bit, and we do a 15.5 with default setup, which is, I'd say, is a pretty decent lap. And then we're going to move on to Ferrari at the end of this. But I thought my Williams lap was actually probably the most impressive lap I actually did was like higher than people who were in like Ferraris and stuff like that, and it was only about 2 seconds off, or just under 3 seconds off the fastest time. But now we're in the Ferrari, the last car that I'm going to showcase, and a lot of people have said they really like the sound in this game. Again, I'm not a complete expert on how the car should sound, but I would say it definitely has a more satisfying pitch, especially when you're going off throttle and the car just burbling as it's going down the gears, which you might be able to hear in just a second. Yeah, just between, like, if you're not on the throttle, if you're completely off the throttle, where the car's idling, it feels, well, it sounds very, very nice for that. And the new lock-up sound as well. I would say the handling, it feels very, very smooth. Then the tracks itself feel incredibly smooth, and so does the handling itself. But I have been told that it is going to be different for the beta or when the game actually comes out itself. So that's going to be interesting to see how different it is. Overall, the game, I would say, is quite understeery compared to F1 2019. But it's still going to need a lot of time to see of the true nature of it and just how far you can push with the limits. So come through here using first gear through that chicane. So extra rotation is still evident in this game, although it definitely seems to be not as beneficial as it was in F1 2019. Coming across the line, that's a 15.2 with a default setup. I was quite happy with that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully I've explained it quite well, but please ask me any questions down below and I will try to go through those as well. Again, thank you as always, and I'll catch you soon. Peace.